Hello, friends. Happy Friday. Welcome into Pack a Day Happy Hour. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Thank you so much, as always, for being here. Excited to chat Packers with you guys. I do have some somewhat bad news. I do have a very, very tight schedule today. In fact, I thought I was going to have to cancel this for a little bit, but I will be here till about 3:30-ish. So more of a Aaron Nagler type Packers live event today. So yeah, probably about 3 to 3:30. So if you want to get those questions in, make sure to do so. Super chats will go to the top. Member questions I'll get to after that, but we'll try to get through as many as we can over the next half hour or so. And then, like I said, unfortunately, I do have to go. I was expecting to go to Chicago tomorrow morning for a soccer tournament, and now we are leaving tonight due to some weather stuff. So everything just got a little bit more compact than I was expecting. So my apologies for that at the onset here. Troy, we'll start with you. You're the Packers assistant GM. Goot tells you to put together a trade package for Crosby, Garrett, Parsons, and Hendrickson, and to rank them based on who you'd go after first, second, etc. What do you do? Troy, my goodness, my friend, we could spend probably the next half an hour just talking about this. How I would probably label them is just in general, right? Take the trade compensation aside. Probably put Micah first due to age. He's going to be really good for a really long time, super versatile. And I'd have to look at the contract really quick, but just in general, I would put Micah first, primarily due to age. I'd probably put Garrett second, Crosby third, Hendrickson fourth. But I would be very, 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 very pleased with any of the four. I think then it comes down to contract negotiations, what the agents for each of them want on a new contract in Green Bay, and then draft capital that you would want in return. So, for example, if Micah Parsons is 2 firsts and a third, and Garrett's 2 firsts and LVN, and Crosby is just a first, and Hendrickson is like a second and a fourth. And I'm not saying that those are necessarily the exact values, right? But I'd probably, in that situation, lean a little bit more towards like a Max Crosby or a Trey Hendrickson, maybe keeping as many of the resources as I can while still getting a premium player at a premium position. I would be more intrigued by that. So I think it's a sliding scale, right? And you have to evaluate, and it would take me more than just a couple minutes here to answer the question, but you have to evaluate the age, the contract, what draft capital, and just what capital in general that you have to give up to acquire the player, and then what you think you'd be getting in return. But in general, I'd put probably Parsons and Garrett just a little bit higher than Crosby, and Hendrickson's very, very close near Crosby as well. But as I said, if I could get to the end of the end of the offseason with any of those 4 players, I'd feel pretty excited about it and feel like I helped my team in a pretty significant way. And I could probably go like to a lesser extent than Khalil Mack, Josh Sweat, Milton Williams. Like there's going to be opportunities, I think, to improve this team in the trenches in one way or another. Clearly the draft is going to be a piece of that as well. So how they go about doing that is going to be very interesting. But off the top of my head, Troy, that's how I would probably start ranking them. Baby QB, happy Valentine's Day, Andy. Happy Carrington Valentine's Day to you as well, Baby QB. Who are your favorites, or who are your top 3 NFC and AFC teams for next year? It's another one that's really, really difficult because we don't even know what the rosters are going to be made up of, right? Really difficult to tell where, what teams are going to improve in a significant way, which ones are going to take a step back, what the draft looks like, free agency, trades, etc. I mean, we're hearing rumors of a Matthew Stafford trade. Will Brock Purdy be brought back in San Francisco? Like there are going to be some pretty significant moves that could easily shake up. If one of these, top teams gets a Myles Garrett on top of what they already are, like if Detroit gets a Myles Garrett, what Green Bay does, these are going to factor in massively as we start looking ahead to which of these teams will be best in 2025. But I think it's mostly the usual subjects, right? Like, or suspects, I should say. I think you're looking at primarily Detroit as still a key team in the NFC, Philly, of course. And then I still put Green Bay in that conversation. Ben Solak clearly agrees if you read the NFL Insiders article today. So those are probably my top 3 going into the offseason. But again, it very much depends on exactly what happens. Washington's going to play a factor in that. Minnesota could, depending on what they do. Like San Francisco could, depending on what they do. But I'll go with those 3 to start off with. And then in the AFC, I still think Buffalo, Baltimore are 2 of your top ones. And then I think KC takes a step back. Does Houston bounce back? Can the Chargers actually finally get there? I don't know. I guess maybe I'll still go KC, but I could see the Chargers taking a step into that next echelon as well. So those are just some kind of off the top of my head. Am I going to do a video analysis of Chase Young? Not at this time, not my expectation to do so, but I will do an episode on defensive ends in totality. And I'll go over him and watch a little bit of tape on him to kind of be able to talk educatedly about him on that episode. So I'll do probably a defensive ends episode of tackles, defensive tackles, offensive line, probably in general, wide receivers, and then corners. I'll probably do 5 episodes on kind of the main target positions for Green Bay, and then kind of go from there. So I will touch base on him at some point in time, probably in that defensive end breakdown. Pink hat is appropriate today for Valentine's Day. I wish that I could tell you that that played a factor into choosing the pink hat. In reality, it didn't even factor into my brain. I have not even thought really about Valentine's Day at all today. So no, it did not play a factor, but it is very appropriate. Mike McGee, thank you so much. You enjoy your weekend as well. Thanks so much for being here. Do you want Devontae back, or do you want someone else or a drafted receiver? I like Devontae because he can help develop Reed, and maybe we can move on from Dobbs Wicks. What do you think? We're not moving on from Wicks yet. He's not a free agent until 2027. So you have plenty of time to still sort of figure him out. Dobbs, you'll have a decision on in 2026, of course. As I've said kind of all along, I think whether you're looking at trade, free agency, or even the draft, at the top of the draft, I don't think there's a perfect fit at wide receiver for Green Bay. I hope there is, and I hope Goody can find him, because I have not quite yet found that perfect wide receiver that makes the most sense. If there is one, the one I kind of keep coming back to is Davante Adams, and it's not going to be perfect. You have obviously a relationship that already existed there. You have a pretty exorbitant contract cost in all actuality. He's aging very fast at this rate. Like he's getting up there in age, and that's going to be a problem, you would think, at some point sooner rather than later. But if you can get him on a 1 or 2 year deal and bring him in to solidify that number 1 spot in Green Bay, it still is the one to me that makes the most sense. I think he fixes the majority of the problems at wide receiver. He's a playmaker. He wins against man-to-man coverage. He's still a stud. He's kind of the guy that, again, resets the room. Now you've got maybe Dobbs as your 2, Reed as your slot guy, Wicks as your 4, and then you get Watson coming back at some point. It's the one that makes the most sense to me, even if there are flaws in the logic and even if it's not a perfect 1A fit. It's the one that I come closest to. I can't quite get there with Godwin. I can't quite get there with a DK Metcalf, although I wouldn't mind that either. I can't quite get there with anybody. And that's, again, early draft as well as free agency trades. It's difficult to find that perfect player that exactly Green Bay needs. You know, they kind of need a healthy Christian Watson. That would be an ideal player to add. And of course, you'd love something even better than that. That player just doesn't exist out there at the moment. Now, sometimes weird things happen, right? A.J. Brown, when he was traded from the Titans, nobody was expecting A.J. Brown to be available. So sometimes weird things happen where there's a player available where you're just like, where did that come from? Like, why would they trade A.J. Brown? And we just saw Luka Doncic traded, right, in the NBA. Weird things happen. Sometimes teams in a player have a falling out and a team moves on unexpectedly. And maybe Green Bay can find somebody like that. I don't know who it is. I don't know why it would be that way, but hopefully they can. And if they can, I would be all for it. But right now it's been difficult to pinpoint that 1A wide receiver for Green Bay. But if there is one that I kind of come back to, it has been Devontae more often than not. McManus. I would bring back McManus, and then I would, you still have Alex Hale, and I would probably bring in like an undrafted free agent kicker as well. Just to like kind of like taking a lottery on a quarterback, like take one on a kicker too. Like for some reason, if you get into camp and either McManus struggles mightily or you stumble upon the next Ryan Longwell, all right, great. Like you probably can swing, McManus for a 6th or 7th round pick to some needy kicker team if you need it. And then you go forward with your 23-year-old awesome kicker that you happened upon in undrafted free agency. So I would probably, and again, I don't know if Alex Hale really moves the needle for me one way or the other, but I would probably bring back McManus and then bring in a lottery ticket kicker that, again, maybe you find your next Ryan Longwell or something like that. So that's probably what I would be leaning towards. All right. Ralph, thank you for the super chat. If they knew they play in Green Bay and want home playoff games, I think they need to change to more maulers. I'm tired of not being able to push people off the ball. If pass pro regresses, so be it. I don't think it's quite that simple, Ralph, although I do understand your emphasis. And we all like, big physical offensive linemen, right? What Green Bay is trying to do is, in a way, sort of have their cake and eat it too. Not to try to rhyme on Valentine's Day here. So what you end up happening in a lot of these situations is you have teams that kind of build an offensive line with an identity. And sometimes that's going to be more of a run dominant offensive line. And maybe they struggle more in pass protection. Sometimes you're going to get more of a, I don't want to say necessarily finesse, but a quicker, more fleet footed offensive line. You're going to run some more zone blocking stuff and you're going to be able to pass protect. And that's the way that you're going to build the team. And the truth of the matter is there's no perfect 1A way to build it. And right now, what's in vogue is, oh, go get those big physical guys. Okay, that might be in vogue now. And then a year from now, 2 years from now, it swings back the other way and you want your finesse guys. And like these things ebb and flow so quickly in the NFL. Or you end up in this scenario where some teams are mauling teams, some teams are more finesse teams, some teams are passing teams, some teams are running teams. What Green Bay is trying to do and why they go for these freak athletes at all these different positions is that like they're going for the guys that can do everything. That's what they're trying for. That there's not this flaw in their game where you have to platoon certain players or, great, we've got 3 guys that can run block amazing, but they can't pass block to save their lives. We all want everything, and it's really, really difficult to have it. I think Green Bay's, for the most part, done a good job of finding players that are good pass protectors. They're good run blockers. You can run a zone blocking scheme with them. Like, I think Rashid's a fine run blocker. I think Sean Ryan's a good run blocker. Zach Tom, hits his spots, seals off people well. He's fine at it. Like Myers, you can use an upgrade. We know that. Jenkins is fine at it. Like we didn't exactly see a running game with Josh Jacobs that struggled last year, right? Yeah, they might not have the mauling guys that can move you on a 4th and inches or whatever in the goal line when it's 3rd and 1 on the 1 yard line. They may not exactly have that, but we're not talking about a running game that struggled to any significant extent. So I get it. You might want that now. And then all of a sudden you're seeing Jordan Love sacked over and over and over again. And you're like, screw this. I don't care if we can run the ball. I just want to be able to pass protect again. And again, if you can find the guys that can do a little bit of everything, great. But of course, those are your super high paid offensive linemen that are getting paid 25, 30 million per year or are going in the top 10 of the draft, right? Like they're very difficult to find. Like overall, Green Bay's found a good mix of players who can run block and pass protect. Can it be better? Yes. Are you shooting for more? Yes. But I'll just finalize this by saying there's no perfect 1A way to build any aspect of a team. You can't just say we just want run blockers because guess what? You're going to be down 28-14 sometime in the 4th quarter and you can't run block. And now the team knows you're going to be passing the football and you have all run blocking offensive linemen. Good luck. They can tee off on you. They know exactly what you're doing and you're not coming back from any games. You better be able to play from the lead every single game because you're not coming back with an offensive line that can't pass protect, right? Like, or you might just get into a shootout with Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or a quarterback in their prime and you need to be able to put up, 38, 42 points with throwing the football. And good luck when you've got an offensive line that's more of a run blocking line and vice versa too. Like if you can't run block to some extent, and we saw it this past year, like the best teams in the NFL were able to run the football this past year. And Green Bay was one of those. So there's no perfect 1A way. There's all different sizes, shapes, formulas of building a roster. Green Bay is trying to toe that thin line of getting guys on both sides of the ball, offense and defense, that can stop the run, stop the pass the ball, run the ball, do all of it. Sometimes you don't end up with a A+ run game or an A+ pass game or an A+ run defense or an A+ pass defense by maybe going a little bit more in that direction, but they can hang with anyone and they can hang in any game too. Maybe that's the wrong way of doing it. And if that's your prerogative, I don't necessarily disagree. I just know that if you go in any one direction too far, that can be the wrong way of doing it too. You just have to try to build the best well-rounded roster that you possibly can with really good football players that can do a variety of different things, get some luck along the way, have the ball bounce your way, have guys progress and be trending at the right time. Don't get injuries at the wrong time. You need a little bit of all of it. And if there were a specific formula of how to build it the same way every single time, every single team would be doing it that way. And there just isn't. There just isn't at this point. So I don't necessarily, it's not me disagreeing with you. I'm just saying there's not a perfect way to do it. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Let's see. I think we left off where we go. With Mike here, my second team will take a step up, bolt up. Maybe. Fun thought experiment for Andy and everyone. You are granted one Luka-esque trade. The caveat is they must be 25 and they must not be in current trade talks, Garrett, etc. who do you trade for? I mean, I don't know a list of 25-year-old football players off the top of my head. So I need a little bit more time on that, Richard, but I don't know. How old is Jaden Daniel? Like, I guess I don't need it necessarily over Jordan Love, but that'd be an interesting one. I'd have to look. I'd have to look at who's all 25 in the league. Trying to think of like a top tiers, like a Derek Stingley or a Sauce Gardner at corner, like 25 years old. Is like Micah 25. Like Micah's got to be around 25, right? 25. Micah. All right, I'm going to take Micah Parsons. I'll take Micah Parsons, 25 years old. All right, how big of a deal is it that Detroit lost both of their coordinators? That's what you want as a head coach, but can Detroit sustain without them? We're about to find out. We are about to find out. I wasn't super like enthusiastic about their hires at either position, but we'll see if Dan Campbell stumbled upon gold again at both of those. But we are about to find out if this was Dan Campbell's culture and a bunch of really good players, or if the systems on both sides were what making both the offense and the defense tick. Can Jared Goff survive without Ben Johnson? Can this Detroit Lions team in general survive without the intensity of Glenn and the X's and O's of Ben Johnson? Like, both of those things are going to be very fun to watch. I expect Detroit's going to still be very good, but I think both of those losses are definitely felt in Detroit to some extent. Just how much remains to be seen. Just wanted you to know, if I underrated who is the first Packer you think of, for me, it is Sam Shields. If I said underrated, who is the first Packer you think of? For me, it's Sam Shields. Yeah, I would actually say Tramon Williams. As much as I think Tramon Williams is still rated well, I still don't think he's rated well enough. I think I would go Tramon Williams in that answer. I also still think people don't talk enough about how great Clay Matthews was in his prime. Like, Clay Matthews was unbelievable. Like, we celebrate all these, like, I rarely see Clay Matthews jerseys. Like, it's really weird. It's one of the weirdest things. Like, we don't talk about him ever. Like, he was unbelievable. Like, unbelievable. Made one of the biggest plays in Packers Super Bowl history. Like, it's an iconic moment, an unbelievably iconic moment. I just don't feel like he ever quite gets the credit he deserves either. Have you thought about a trade for Bradley Chubb? He may help these young defensive ends and Gary. I'd have to look at Chubb a little bit closer, if I'm being honest, Isaiah. I have not thought about it. I know Ken Ingles floated that out there. Probably be a little bit cheaper. I think he's been injured. I've never, ever, even going back to his draft days and when he was traded previously, I've never been a huge Bradley Chubb guy. I think his pressures were really high, either last year or the year before that, if I remember correctly. But I'd have to look at him a little bit closer, if I'm being honest. Here in Seattle is more likely to cut Lockett and hang on to Metcalf, unfortunately. I think Lockett is gone. What they do with Metcalf, I think, is still maybe a little bit more up for grabs, but I don't really expect Metcalf to go anywhere. Do we go into the draft looking for a larger possession wide receiver or a more versatile, smaller slot? Neither. I think they need a vertical stretch the field wide receiver is probably what they're looking at. They just don't have that on the team. Even if they get a guy like Devontae Adams, they don't really have it on the team, right? Like, Devontae can win deep, but that's not his forte. He's not a speedy stretch the field guy. So I'd be looking more for that type of wide receiver. They don't need the slot guy. They have Reed, they have Wicks. Multiple guys can play in the slot. They don't need kind of a possession guy. They have Dobbs. If they get somebody like an Adams or something like that, they can have that as well. Even Wicks can be a little bit of a possession guy. So I think they just need that stretch the field, deep play guy. I don't think they need smaller. I don't think they need possession. They just need somebody that can stretch the field and make big plays down the field. With Kendall Fuller just being released, do you think he could be a free agent option? I know he was one that you liked last year. I didn't even see that yet, but yeah, I think he could potentially be an option. I'd have to go back and again, watch him a little bit closer. I think he's probably around like 29, 30 years old now, maybe 31. 30. He'll turn 31 in. Oh, he just turned 30 yesterday. All right. Well, happy belated birthday, Kendall Fuller. So yeah, he just turned 30 yesterday. So he's getting a little bit up there in age, but I don't think he's like a complete impossibility, but again, would need to go watch him a little bit more. Will Anderson Jr., juicing Tom's Pro Bowl prospect, said he was the best offensive tackle he faced last year. I did see that there was on Radio Row, there was a mention of that as well. Zach Tom deserves his flowers. He's a phenomenal pass protecting offensive lineman. I actually think Tom had a slightly down year's the wrong word, but I thought it was a very slight step back. Didn't quite play even as well as I think he can. And that's just me being like as high on Zach Tom as you can possibly be. Like, I think he's tremendous. So even just a small step back that maybe most people don't notice. Like, I think I'll put it this way. I think there's a level that Zach Tom can reach that is even far beyond what he did this last year. I'll put it that way. He's a phenomenal football player. Really, really fun to watch. Great pick by Goody in the 5th round of the draft. Have you thought about Kayvon Thibodeau? He's on the last year of his rookie contract, and the Giants may be looking to trade him. I haven't. I don't think that that's probably the type of deal that you're looking for in some sort of trade. I'm not sure how much he entirely moves the needle. Again, would be another player I'd have to go back and watch a little bit closer, but I haven't spent too much. I've seen some people throw out there like Azeez Ojulari. To me, that's you have a team of Azeez Ojularis already. Like you've got some solid, okay, good pass rushers and Cox and LVN and Enigbare and Rashawn Gary. Like I need a dude. Like that's what I need, a legitimate dude. And maybe Thibodeau can get there still, but I would, if I'm going to trade, I'm going to go much more aggressive than Kayvon Thibodeau is probably how I would view it. They go to 18 games. Will they have 2 or more NFL bye weeks and a larger roster? I don't know the answer, but the answer to both should be yes. They should already have 2 bye weeks. It's silly that they don't. And I think if you go 18 games, I would like to see a 55-man roster. Increase it by 2. Still probably, go with 48 active on game day, maybe 49, but they should absolutely increase rosters, and they absolutely already should have a second bye week. Thoughts on Zach Bond? Too much talk about D. Well, Zach Bond is on D, so I'm not exactly, maybe you mean D line. I just don't think they're going to go linebacker. I think they like Quay, they love Cooper, and they already selected Tyron Hopper in the 3rd round. I would be stunned, and I mean stunned, if they spent a huge chunk of money, 12, 15 mil, 18 mil, whatever it takes to get Zach Bond to add an off-ball linebacker. Just don't see it this year. They're going to run out there with Quay and Cooper as their primary linebackers. They're going to expect Hopper to take a step and probably fill in that 4-3, and then they'll grab a 4th or 5th round linebacker, probably bring back a Wilson or McDuffie, fill in the roster with some back of the draft or undrafted free agent, maybe a vet minimum type of guy, and kind of go from there. So do not expect that to be in Green Bay, but great player, unbelievable year, and expect him to get a huge contract somewhere. Oh, about edges we won't get. Gotcha. I don't think Love and Football, that last part, I think they're going to get a big time edge. I do. I think they're going to make a big investment on, or maybe not edge, but a defensive lineman. My expectation is some big investment on the defensive line. That's what I believe personally. Maybe it's a corner instead. Maybe it's a wide receiver. Maybe it's a conglomeration of other stuff. I don't know. My expectation going in is that they will make a big investment in pass rusher. It's tougher to sort of prognosticate who exactly that will potentially be. You could ask Gutekunst one question, get an actual in-depth answer. What would you ask? What I mean by actual answer is something that is not GM coach speak. So you'd have to tell me the truth, basically. I would have to really, really think out like the exact wording of the question, because I would want to just gain as much information as possible. So it might be something like, give me your thought process on every pick in the draft that you've ever made. Like I would want as much information and knowledge as possible. So I want to know exactly what he was thinking on the clock with like every draft pick that he's ever made. Who were you considering? What trades were available? Like I would just love to know the inner minds, and then like say, or like, what trades have you been offered during your time as GM, and or like what are all the trades that you have discussed in your entirety of your general manager tenure that would have either brought you players or sent players away, and like what again his thought process was there. Like those are the things that I would nerd out about forever. Like I would give anything to be in the draft room with Green Bay. I wouldn't even need to say a word about it, report on it. I don't care anything. I just want to see like all the different thought processes, the like moving up, moving down, the phone calls that come in, the phone calls that they're making out. Like that to me would be a dream scenario. Like just being able to see that on a draft day would be the coolest thing in the world. Like if you asked me if I could go on like any trip in the world or any vacation, see any place, or like I would want to be in Green Bay's draft room on draft day. That's like my ultimate experience. That is my ultimate Andy experience if I could have anything in the world. So anything related to that is what I would want to know. Not close enough to even remotely think about it, Adam, but promise you I'll get there eventually. Do you think a wide receiver in the draft could fix the room? A fast, big guy similar to Watson who can draw attention and raise everyone up, if not be a number one? Haven't liked any of the free agents. Again, I have to look at these draft wide receivers closer. I know it's not the strongest wide receiver draft in the room, but if you get a, Greg Jennings who came in and made a pretty big impact right away when he was drafted as a 2nd round pick, or if you get the right guy, of course, to me, it's less about the body size, the type or whatever. If you draft somebody and they're a really good wide receiver from the onset, that's going to help the wide receiver room. If it takes 3 years, well, then it's not. Or if they're not the dude, then it's not. But if they find somehow a guy in the draft that comes in and plays really well right away, regardless of whether they're a speed dude, a possession dude, a gadget dude, I don't really care. It's going to help them in some capacity. But they're going to have to find that guy. And that's going to be up to Goody and company, whether it's a first round pick, a seventh round pick, anything in between. There's going to be a good wide receiver that really helps the team. That's probably on the board 23 or later. Maybe it's a first round pick. Maybe it's a UDFA. Who knows? But if Goody and company can be the ones that find that guy, yeah, would absolutely help the room. I know it's a little bit of a down year at wide receiver, and finding that exact guy that's going to help and immediately be better than Dobbs and Wicks and Reed, who've already been in the system, I think as a draft pick, that's going to be a very tough thing to do. But hey, maybe if anyone can find it, maybe it's Goody and friends. Haven't watched them. Again, sorry, guys. I know you all want draft answers at this point of the year. As you guys have noticed, I'm very free agent focused right now. That's what comes first. So I take it one step at a time, immediately following the season, recap the season, then jump into free agency. Probably got a week, 2 weeks left of free agency, and then dive headfirst into the draft. So promise you I will get there. Malik Neighbors can't be 25 yet, right? I'm assuming that's the 25-year-old question. Malik Neighbors is 21. Saw somebody say Justin Jefferson. He is 25. All right. So yeah, Jefferson or Parsons, which one would you want? That's an interesting question. Devontae seems like an obvious situation where his age actually is ideal for the future of the wide receiver room. No, I think response to him coming would be better amongst returning guys than any other option. Yeah, I can see that. I think he makes sense. The age of, his game should age better than most wide receivers because he's not a super speedy, big time jump guy. Like he wins with route running, not finesse, but route running and artistry is how he wins. So that doesn't necessarily age always. So I still think he'd be a really good addition to this team. Justin Jefferson at 25. What advice would you give somebody starting a YouTube channel? Don't have expectations, have a passion about it, and do it for fun to begin with. If it elevates something past that, awesome. Don't expect it to, take it one step at a time. If you're thinking of starting it off, go and watch my very first episode. You can sort it by date. You can go easily find my first episode. It's the most ridiculous piece of crap you'll ever see. It is this white wall in the corner of the wall behind me with zero lighting, with no microphone, with no HD camera, just a laptop and me talking Packers. It's awful. It could not be possibly worse if I tried for it to be worse. The content's fine, but it's as awful from production value as you can possibly get. And then over time, you get a better computer, you get better lighting, you get better microphones, you make those investments and you get better at it over time. It doesn't need to be perfect from day one. Nobody's watching you from day one, so it doesn't need to be. But if you can get somewhat of a following, then improve upon it over time, get more of a following, and so on and so forth. There's an evolution to it. And my hopefully a year from now, 2 years from now, looks way better than this, and there might be more graphics involved in all of that, etc. So there's an evolution to it. It doesn't have to be perfect from day one. The audio podcast was far from perfect on day one. The video was a joke from day one. But you evolve it over time, you get better, you improve upon it, and you just have to sometimes take the plunge and start doing stuff. For me, if I don't start it in the first place, even if it's garbage from day one, I'm never gonna do it. Because if I'm trying to make everything perfect from day one, I'm never gonna get there, and then I never start it. So you just start it, just start doing it, and then you might get nobody, you might get somebody, and then hopefully 1 turns into 5, 5 turns into 10. I started writing my own blog, scottysports.com. Probably 15 years ago now, something like that. Nobody read it. That small, tiny blog turned into a small blog a small writing opportunity at a website called titletownsoundoff.com, which led into a opportunity at cheeseheadtv.com, which led into a couple radio hits with Marcus Eversole, a TV gig with WFRV, a credentialed opportunity through Packer Report, starting my own Pack-A-Day podcast, starting the video podcast, being on the radio every single day, and so on and so forth. And this tiny little blog that 2 of my friends and, probably 3 people that stumbled upon it and laughed at it read, turned into this. So you never know what it's going to become. Don't sell yourself short. Start doing it, but don't have expectations. Don't necessarily have expectations either. Like it took me up until probably well past the time where I needed it to, where I felt comfortable quitting my day job and doing this full time. So yeah, those are probably my biggest things. Be passionate about it. Don't feel like it needs to be perfect from day one, and, find a niche as well. Find something that somebody's not doing. One of the things that got me into it as a Packer fan and got me some following was doing the Grading the Pack, where I was watching every player on every play. I was doing something that outside of PFF, which wasn't a person, right? It was a company doing it. There's no person that was doing that exact same thing. So I had to do something different. I had to do something extreme, had to do something more than somebody else was doing. And that allowed me to kind of build everything from there. So you have to have that niche too. All right. Do need to get out of here. Going to try to get to some member ones super quick. As I mentioned at the onset, sorry that I have to go so quickly today. Ian, how stable do you think Bullard will be in the slot? If we do get an outside corner, I think there's more confidence in Valentine on outside than Nixon. Do they move Nixon back in? I actually think there's more confidence on Nixon on the outside than Valentine, but I think they would have more confidence on Nixon on the inside if they needed to go back to him. I think they wouldn't hesitate to go back to Nixon in the slot if they felt it necessary. I personally think, and I think they think, that Nixon's actually better on the outside. I think Bullard will hopefully solidify that spot, but it wouldn't stun me if they continue to garner resources at the corner position that have versatility that could potentially play outside or inside so that they do have those options for Jeff Hafley moving forward. MVS, it's not out of the realm of possibility for him at wide receiver. It's really not. Do you think the receivers have the same issue if Aaron Jones is in the building? Not talked about enough since it happened. Yeah, I don't think it changes much, honestly. I really don't. It's impossible to say. I think Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs bring their own brand of leadership this past year. And at the end of the day, you're responsible for your performance on the field. Like if you need, like if I'm like, I can't survive without Aaron Jones in the room, like it just doesn't work that way. You have to go out and find a way to be a professional and be successful regardless of what's going on around you. And to me, that's not an excuse for any of the wide receivers. Come on, peeps, help Andy out. Hit the like button. Appreciate that, Izzy. I was actually looking through and ran into an old one. How time flies. 3 years is in listening daily. Thanks for that, Andy. Appreciate that, Alex. Appreciate that a ton. Nobody lifted up Dobbs or Wicks on or off the field. We don't know that. We don't know that to be the case at all. Could have been multiple people who lifted up Wicks and Dobbs on or off the field, and we just didn't see it. And that's totally fine. It doesn't necessarily always need to be in the spotlight, right? And again, it is up to Romeo Dobbs and Dontavian Wicks to be themselves and to go out and perform at the highest level of possible. Like I can't count on everyone else to support me to be a better podcaster. Like I have to go out and do it on my own. Like everyone is doing their own job day in and day out. Like they're responsible for themselves. So to me, that's not an excuse in any way, shape, or form. All right. Fred, thank you so much for that. Andy Isabella. Oh man, what a great name. What a, how do we want to say it? Like a very polarizing draft prospect that did not clearly work out the way that anyone was hoping for. I really liked him, but I knew that there was also limitations to his game. And, you know, when Isabella goes before a DK Metcalf, you're just like, are we sure what we're doing here? It's been fun, guys. I'm sorry I have to get out here a little bit earlier. I'll try to make up for it in one of our chats coming up. I will see you guys soon. I hope you all have a tremendous weekend. Stay safe. I know it's supposed to be snowy in the Green Bay and Wisconsin area. So drive careful out there. Wherever you are, have a safe and enjoyable weekend. I'll be back next week. Of course, we've got a great slate of podcasts coming up this weekend and beyond, 365 days a year. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, give those 5-star reviews. I'll see you all soon. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.